Hello. Hi. Welcome to Freelancing Unfiltered. This is the podcast where we set the polished answers aside and then really just get real about what it actually takes to build a business that works for you. I'm your host, Adawogu, a freelance operations manager and system strategist. And each week, I will sit down with freelancers, entrepreneurs, and founders who are boldly building their own paths. Here we talk loudly about the things most people really only murmur about, and that's the messy middle, the money, the mindset, the burnout, the breakthroughs, and the systems that keep it all running. So if you're ready for that kind of conversation, really just talking about things that cut through the noise, crack open real insight, and remind you that you're not alone in figuring it all out, you've come to the right place. Today's guest is Emma Jane, the founder of Common Thread Agency. Emma is a copywriter and storyteller who works with individuals and brands to shape meaningful stories through writing content and intimate experiences and events. Her work centers on her lived experiences of her clients, emotional honesty, and creating connection without feeling like it's a performance. In a world that's extremely loud and is constantly like pushing trend stuff in your face, just chasing that content, Emma's mission is to really help exceptional people become basically impossible to overlook. And it's like finding that human thread that makes people truly care. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the vulnerability of putting your real story out there, the systems that protect your creative energy, and what it really means to build a business around depth in a world that makes surface level content just way too easy. Hi, Emma.
Hello, how are you?
Good. It's so nice to be able to talk to you. I wanted to first talk about what I saw, what you gave me. Obviously, your website is beautiful. It talks a lot about your personal journey. It talks about how you fell in love with words long before you knew what to do with them, and that you were driven crazy by brilliant people. This is quote unquote brilliant people explaining their work in the most mundane way. What was that specific
Yeah.
moment or series of frustrations for you where that feeling turned from an itch into an actual business idea, thinking, okay, maybe I should start doing this?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's something that I don't know was one particular moment, but I actually think honestly was like, as you said, a series of moments over time. And for me, I
Mm,
I really got to see, I've been in business for 5 years, so many people across honestly the most different industries. I've worked with people who were coaches or in service industries. I've worked with brands, skincare brands. I've worked with people from across the board. And I just kept noticing that
mm,
very smart, experienced people were unable to really talk about their work, not because they necessarily lacked confidence all the time, but because they were too close to what they did.
mm,
So they would not be able to necessarily do it justice and not really be able to, I guess, articulate it the way that I felt it really could be, explained. And so the turning point wasn't necessarily one thing, but just this repeated problem where I kept thinking to myself, I'm speaking to you, and this is not doing justice to who you are and who,
yeah.
what your mission is and the person in front of me.
Wow, I love that. I feel like this is an interesting question to ask, but in your marketing, you talk about really just finding people that were brilliant all over the place, and understanding that for some reason, because they weren't marketing themselves, it was really hindering them when it came to actually getting more clients or leads or whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
Is it easy to find clients who have that potential, or is it that you feel like every client has that potential? It's just a matter of them realizing that. What does that kind of look like for you talking to people?
Sure. I guess the easiest way really that I like to think about it, and sort of why I ended up even calling my, marketing agency or business side of what I do common thread, is because I do think we all have a common thread. And I think the common thread is that
Mm,
everyone has something valuable to, particularly business owners, everyone has something valuable to bring to the
yeah.
table. And if you have a business, it's because you believe that there's a service or a product that brings value to the world. So I would say
Yeah.
that even in cases where I worked with people, maybe where, I don't know, off the bat, it may not have seemed the most exciting or shiny or crazy concept or unique or whatever it might be. There was always something underneath that that I felt if
Yeah.
we could just explain it with the right words or tap into their story or what made them different, we could do it justice and get other people to care about it as well.
No, no, it does. So yeah, you feel like everybody has that sort of gold nugget hidden deep
Yeah.
inside them, whether they know it or not. I
Yeah,
love that.
exactly.
In terms of common threads mission, like you say you help people, quote unquote, be impossible to overlook. When you were starting out, what did you feel was most often overlooked about your own voice or value? How did you learn to start talking about it?
I really like this because, when I started my business, it was the start of 2021. So this is a long time ago. And it was at a time where we were pre ChatGPT, we were pre AI,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the way that people were selling online. So I was a virtual assistant who did marketing and copywriting when I first started because I wasn't confident enough to kind of out of the gate say what I did and who I was. And for me, I think I really I was really comfortable making myself sound like everyone else because I thought it would allow people to trust me more. Because if I sounded like everyone else who was selling as a newbie, I wouldn't draw attention to myself and I would sound like I knew what I was talking about. And so I think for me, I
Yeah.
really downplayed and put my skills into a neat box rather
Mhm.
than actually realizing that people were not hiring me because of the deliverables that I gave them or because of how neat or polished what I was, saying sounded. They were hiring me
Yeah.
because they wanted me to be able to see them. And I couldn't really articulate how I saw them unless I actually spoke like who I am. And so that was a real
Yeah.
journey to like learning how to take up that space in a way that I felt comfortable and learning what my voice was. And it only really clicked for me when I stopped using like the industry language around me because it was just so common to speak a certain way. I think nowadays
Wow.
people are a little bit more mindful of that with ChatGPT. No one wants to sound the same, but back then it was really common
Yeah.
that, the safest thing to do was to sound as close to everyone else as you could so you didn't stand out too much.
Do you mean like templates? Like people like you used to purchase templates and just like, yeah, say this is like trusted work, tried and true. I'll just use that.
Yeah, yeah, templates or because being a virtual assistant was quite new and there was a lot of people teaching you how to do it because it was still
Mm.
pandemic times. There was a lot of the same teachings and language out there of this is how to sell, this is proven of how you'll find clients. And so, like any newbie, you try to follow the footsteps of the people before you. And so
Yeah.
I think naturally there was less examples to look at of how different can this look.
Yeah. I love that. That really makes me think about how interesting how we both started, by the way, Emma. I started in 2021 as well with the
Yeah.
pandemic. And I also started as a virtual assistant, and then I became somebody who was an
Yeah.
operations strategist because I really like what I do, and I find it creative every day. But so
Mm.
much of what you talked about, like interacting with the client, is just about understanding who they are innately
Yeah.
and just seeing them as who they are. Honestly, that's like step one, or step zero to two, like
Yeah.
one of the first steps. And if you miss that, it's really hard to produce, what's the word, like really custom work that makes them feel like this has really solved my issue without even understanding how to articulate it to you. Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah. No matter what you
Yeah.
do, any service provider, I think it really applies. It applies for us
Yeah.
across the
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
I can't
I
believe you
love
started
that.
as a
Thank
VA
you.
too. How funny. It was such a time that was the entry
Yeah.
in. So,
Yeah. And I believe it was the person who I heard it from was a lady on TikTok, and she was like promoting courses, all of that.
Jessica
I didn't end
Hawk?
up going with Jessica Hawk. Yeah,
Same. Yeah.
I love Jessica. I didn't end up working with her directly, but like she's super cool to me. I mean, I just saw on her Instagram, she was like, yeah, I still have my old car from when I was working in the hospitality industry. So she's super centered, and like she knows what it is to, grow and just scale and stay humble and just understand that the work comes in really respecting your craft. So she was
Couldn't
great
agree
for
more.
like being the helm of the virtual assistants who have broken off into all these different fields.
She's the
Okay.
cause of a lot of businesses, I reckon.
No, she doesn't know.
She
Just kidding,
doesn't
she
know
does.
her
She does. She doesn't know her power. She doesn't know what she birthed. I
Yeah.
love that. Okay. Your work, this is the next question. Your work centers
Mhm.
on emotional honesty and connection without the performance, as you talked about before. So, the digital space, all the world is a stage, and that includes that digital space, especially nowadays. So, what does that performance look like for you in storytelling? How do you kind of weaponize or use that performance in the digital space to sort of stand out and make it fun and really just weave in storytelling? And how are you able to do that for yourself and for your clients?
So when I look at, the online space is a big place, and I think sometimes we use that term, but we probably forget, just like what we were saying before, how vast it actually is. And I think,
Mm.
you know, we can all feel as human when someone is trying to be impressive. And this isn't an attack on anyone or even necessarily a conscious action. We've all done it at some point or another. And you can sense when someone is not necessarily showing up with that authentic undertone to what they're doing. And so I really think that, like, when I look at performance, particularly in the online space content and then when people are writing, I look at people who are often using their vulnerability or parts of their experience in life or their story, maybe even hard times they've been through. And it's used a little bit more as a tactic rather than a form of expression toward a goal. And when I strip that away, I really start to look at with people, what's true and what's not true here. And for a lot of people may think to themselves, okay, like being emotionally honest means I have to take a hard time and really, inflate it and make it sound worse than it was, make it sound bigger than it was. But I like to look at what's true and what's not true. And then with what is true, what's left over, how can we look at that and really find the golden thread in that story rather than taking what could be a hard experience and inflating it to sound worse in order to, you know, become a bit of a performance to get empathy or perhaps to get sales, depending what you do. Yeah, it's a bit of a longer answer, but I
Mm.
think I start to look for what people leave out and I start to look a bit through what they put in because oftentimes they're leaving out really important things that they don't think anyone cares about and they're inflating the things they're putting in.
Mm. I love that. Honestly, that is really, really important. I mean, so many times as a business owner, you start thinking that, what you're doing for whatever reason, you think it's boring. And you tell
Yeah.
yourself that nobody will be interested. And in order to give yourself a chance, you need to start exaggerating here and there. But there is
Yeah.
so much real story and honesty and what is honestly happening in your own life. And it might not feel like a lot to you. But
Yes.
when an expert like Emma is able to get her hands on it, there can be so much good storytelling and performance coming from it. I mean, think about all the movies, like TV shows that are kind of based on the small towns or small situations, and there's no like big dynamic thing happening, but there can be so much like ups and downs, and there can be real storytelling in it. It's just about really understanding what has happened in the past and letting somebody really have all of that to make something really, really good out of it. I love
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Okay. So you've also mentioned, and I thought this was so interesting, finding the space between what everyone knows and what only you understand. So
Mm.
walk us through a time where, with a client, where uncovering that unique thread changed everything. and not just like their copy, but like how they saw themselves or how they worked. I mean, when we work with clients, there's so many times when it's so interesting when I get like messages and they talk about the things that they have changed in their own life or like just in their work habits that wasn't part of the brief at all, but it just happened and they're so excited it happened and they let me know. So yeah, tell us all about it.
Yeah, of course. So it's an interesting one. So I think with a lot of my clients, often their value or they believe that their inherent value is the most obvious part of what they do. So I've worked with hairdressers or florists, which are two examples I can think of right
Mm,
now, and they thought, doing hair was the most valuable part of what they did, or the fact they went to a floristry school that was quite esteemed, or the fact that they had these certificates or a particular method to how they did the hair. And don't get me
yeah.
wrong, like those things are important, and I believe in qualifications, and I have qualifications myself, and I think that they exist for a reason. But I think what only the magic part of what they did, or the part that I would focus on as a copywriter and marketer, was not necessarily those credentials or those methods that really anyone who studied could get. It was the individual thing that only they understood. So it might have been with the florist, who I'm thinking of, a gentleman that I worked with a couple of years ago. For him, it was less about the credentials that he had in being a florist and more about when he became a florist, he actually had studied architecture. That was his
Mm,
background. And it was during the pandemic, and he decided that he wanted to start doing something creative that he'd always loved, which was working with flowers. And he started to practice and put flowers together. And it was a really difficult time for him, but he started to choose, um, to lean into that passion that he had. And I got
yeah.
to watch him talk and share about this emotional resonance that he felt to being creative and what that meant for him and how that came out in his work for his clients so that they felt his work stood out. And just that's it, it's kind of more of the embodiment. So the last question you asked was about that performance. This space is more about the embodiment. So I could say I've made it the best copywriting schools, but if I've never had an emotional experience where words impacted me or writing changed my life or the value of copywriting was really clear to me, I would never be
Yeah.
able to embody that as a copywriter. I'd always be performing the fact that I think I found it useful or I found it helpful, but I would never be able to live that experience. And so for this florist, for example, he started to actually find his work when we went through and rewrote his story. We found his work on
Wow.
what a cattail here. We found his work a lot more meaningful than he gave it credit for. So he had thought, oh yeah, I'm I'm just like every other florist. And I argue with him that no, you're not. You
Wow.
actually have a background that is sets you apart, but you have a passion that you can clearly articulate through your story, not through one event, but through your life. Those people why a different kind of florist to work with.
So interesting that he thought like he didn't have like an interesting background. I feel like when it comes to like switching a career from something that feels like unrelated, people love that.
Yeah,
They're like, what? You used to,
absolutely.
yeah, now you're literally a florist. You used to work in architecture, right? And now
Yeah,
you're a florist. That's amazing. Yeah. But
yeah.
sometimes
And
when you're
those
in
things
your
inform
head,
you. Yeah.
yeah, when you're in your head or you're kind of working from your own perspective, you're telling yourself all these stories about yourself and you're believing it. It just feels so much like fact. Like
Totally.
if so, even like having somebody who's coming in who's helping you with your storytelling can feel so like transformative to be like, oh,
Mm,
this is actually how you see me, Emma, like, or this
yeah.
is how people can see me, and it's the real truth and my stories that I was just kind of telling you,
Yeah.
and it's really something that can really like captivate people. Like that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Really well said. I completely agree.
Yeah. Okay, so we're on to our next question. As a storyteller, your product is deeply connected to your mental and emotional energy, right? So, what would you say your kind of capacity for your business and just yourself? What does that look like? What specific trigger tells you it's time to raise your prices or open a wait
Mm,
list or, decline a project to
yeah.
protect your energy? What does that look
Yeah.
like for you?
It's taken a lot of practice. I don't think I have it nailed because protect your
Yeah.
emotional And creative output as a service provider is, I think it's kind of like a journey. I really don't think it's a destination, because even when you think you've got it nailed, or when you think you've got it, you probably will have it for a bit and then you'll have to go back to the drawing board, because something will happen and you'll realize, oh, okay, I don't have this figured out. So for me, how I protect that myself is I try to have as much time to reflect outside of doing work that I can, which is always hard, because we're often on client calls or we're making our own content, don't often have a lot of reflection time. So I think for me, something that I really try to do is to reflect on, okay, how did I feel at that client call that I was just on? Or how do I feel when I send someone a proposal and these are the prices I'm charging? And this is from an energetic and an emotional place. So obviously there's the actual tangibles, does my price reflect market value? Does my price reflect industry value? All of those kind of more set in stone things. But for me, it's really like, okay, how do I feel sending this out? Does this feel like I'm resentful when I send out this price? Do I feel overwhelmed and resentful every day because of the amount of work I'm doing for the amount of, input that I'm getting back? Am I declining projects because I'm overworked rather than I'm being picky with them? So I would say it's looking at my capacity and trying to adjust my actions in order to support growing a bigger capacity. Because I think something I learned was that boundaries don't just mean you stop. I think the goal is also you have these boundaries, but you're constantly looking for ways to grow your capacity so you can hold more, maybe not more clients, but maybe more depth of work or more, just more stress capacity, so you can do a better job for the people that you do work with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when you think about it, you working as a storyteller, working in copy, you have like one of the most creative or more creative jobs in really this field than anybody else. And everybody who works in something creative, they know how important it is to have that time to yourself, to literally be bored, to stare at the wall and just, it is a really essential part of the creative process to have that time to yourself to do whatever, let your mind run wild or just be blank, and really come back feeling centered and even having even more ideas for whatever you might need in your life or in your business. So it's super important. And it is hard. I mean, like you have to factor in not just your business, but your schedule, like your life. There's so many things going on. And, there's always going to be this sense of like you're being in flux because there's so many things going on around you in your life. So things are not always going to be perfect. You always have to remind yourself to check in on yourself and figure out if this is something that you're enjoying. And if you get too caught up in whatever you're doing, your own personal projects or client projects, then it can be hard to just really remember to literally stop and slow down, understand what you're doing in the larger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree. And I've learned that over time. I think it's not something that you pick up right away as a freelancer. I think it's adapted to learning and remembering.
Yeah, you have to literally practice it and you really kind of understand that in experience. Okay. So you offer everything from intensive single focus days to ongoing support. How have you designed these offers, not just for client needs, but really creating that sustainable kind of rhythm for your creative brain throughout the year? Do you have like a specific process for that?
It's yes and no. I would say that when I first started offering more like solely marketing and copywriting, so I moved out of being a VA and I went kind of really hard into that industry. I was willing to work on any kind of project, no matter what it was. And I think sometimes at the start of your business or as your freelance journey, you might be in a position where you have to do that, where you have to kind of take on every kind of project that someone brings your way, and you don't really necessarily get the chance to design and offer that people buy. You're kind of just taking requests as they give them to you. But over time for me and with the offers that I have now, I know for me, I like a variety of different types of things because it helps me feel like I'm on top of my game. It gives me a challenge. It stops me from feeling, I don't want to say bored because I'm never bored, but I think it stops that one track way of thinking. I used to write a lot of captions for people prior to ChatGPT coming out. And as much as I lost some clients with that, I was a little bit. It was actually a blessing because I found some of that more repeated work of writing captions just was hindering my, I guess, like creativity because I was writing one kind of work so often. And so I built my offers to try to just support my desire to do deep work, which is like the VIP or the single focus days, and
Yeah.
my desire to do ongoing work, which is in bigger projects or retainers or things like that. So it keeps it feeling alive, it keeps it feeling interesting, and it helps me cognitively stay invested in my business and not just, oh, okay, I'm just getting paid to do this work.
Yeah. 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 100%. I love that. I love the idea that you understand how important it is to really keep yourself motivated and really understand what you like, what really gets you going, and make
Yeah.
sure that's always in the mix, even though
Yeah.
we are working, obviously a job that we love, but there's a business aspect to it. So there can be situations where you might, feel like you're not having the best time, but sometimes it's really about, whatever is around what you do enjoy that is kind of dragging the whole thing down. Yeah, so it's super
Yeah,
important to be aware of
absolutely.
that. Yeah. And then you were talking about AI. Speaking of AI, obviously I have to kind of talk about that. With the
Yeah.
rise of AI writing tools, everyone can generate competent copy, quote unquote. I don't agree personally. But in this new landscape, what do you believe is the like irreplaceable human core of the
Yeah.
true storytelling that freelancers should double down on?
It's funny. It's a different answer to what I would have given pre AI. I think in today's world, exactly. Competent copy is a really good way to say it because whilst I'm either, I will say that there are some copywriting AI tools out there that can absolutely generate you copy that will work, that will get people to buy from you or get people interested. But what I will say is that when it comes to copy that genuinely shares parts of your story, that sounds like a human wrote it, that feels alive, and that does more than just convert someone through a funnel. It actually connects with people. It actually draws people in. It actually allows people to get to know you. I would that you need to throw out a lot of the you need to throw out a lot of the rules that you think that you know about writing. And I do tell people, get in touch with how you write when you're just doing a stream of consciousness. So winning a text to your friend, like a big text about something that happened, when maybe you're journaling about something and you're just writing, or you're thinking about something and you're just letting your mind go. Allow yourself to start writing like that, because I think the one thing that has done is over polished and over formatted the way that we write stories and things like that. So I would tell people that rather than trying to sound proper English, write it like you would say it, like a human. And that already is going to help you stand apart, because traditional writing conventions are important, but you need to get back in touch with what it means to actually just write.
Regarding that, like when it comes to seeing that copy and understanding that sometimes, at the end of the day, maybe it does work. I don't really know like what question to ask you regarding that, but like, what do you think about that situation where, there is this high quality copy that is beautiful and I love seeing them. I love seeing your website. But then sometimes whenever I do see people, and I have seen like ever before ChatGPT came out and then post, like I'm subscribed to like a ton of people, and I get their marketing emails just to be able to see like what's going on, and just seeing the turn into like the AI writing. Obviously, like I guess people are gonna do what they want to do, but it's just interesting to me to kind of wonder like, oh, is this copy like really working, even though it doesn't connect? Like, what do you think is some of the differences between the versions of the AI copy we're seeing now, and just really being able to have somebody who can really clearly tell your
Mm.
story?
I think for me, it's two parts. So with AI copy, the two reason, like, because I try to look at the reasons why people use it, because it helps point out the differences. So people are using it because it helps them get more out with less effort, which is obviously what everyone wants. You want to be constantly visible and have your content consistently out and not be burnt out trying to make it, especially when you're trying to do client work. So what I see is often people who take an approach with the AI copy, it will often feel like you're doing a quantity over quality type of copy. So you'll notice in emails, you might be getting a lot of emails from someone that don't really seem to serve a purpose, or they don't really seem to be telling you anything, or they're not really trying to meet an objective. This is probably for someone who's maybe a little more inexperienced with marketing as a whole. But you'll notice a lot of people who you maybe pre-ChatGPT never really reached out as often to you in their marketing material. And now you get 4 emails a week or 5 emails a week from them, but you're not really ever sure what the point of the emails are. Another difference that I see is, with ChatGPT or, any AI writing that is, I'll just preface here, poorly edited, not really formatted correctly, or people don't go and add their own copy in, because I know if you do that, it will really help, is I just see a lot of the same sentence structure, and our brains are really good at picking up pattern recognition. So the same reason a lot of people talk about not using the M dash as much, that long dash, because that's what ChatGPT uses. It's really, interesting. You could use that and never use ChatGPT, but people automatically now associate it with ChatGPT. So you have to just be so mindful that when you use AI in all of your content, particularly in stories, you'll have the same format, the same sentence structure, and the same cadence to your writing all the time. And it probably won't really change. And so you might not think anyone notices, but people will start to pick it up in their patterns, and they'll start to realize. Whereas if you work with a copywriter, or if you have someone that helps you become a better writer, your writing, you'll have your own style, but having a style is very different to having the same format. And so if anyone listening to this goes on Substack and, subscribes to a writer, you'll be able to see that a lot of writers have a really great style, and the style is very them, but that the format of how they're writing is not the same every time.
Yeah. I agree, honestly. I mean, it's literally that quote, you didn't fall out of a coconut tree. You exist in the context of all in which you lived and what came before you. That was a huge meme, but I remember hearing that, and I was like, no, wait, that's actually so true. Every time I'm reading somebody's emails, sometimes I read emails and I read, I've read the one from yesterday or last week or whatever, and it literally exists in that context. It references the last email. It talks about the progress that they've had in the past month or 2 weeks, and it just feels, to put it in short, I can say a lot more things, but to put it in short, it just feels a lot more alive than copy that can feel technically correct, or even on some level, impactful emotionally. But there is this sense of okay, this is somebody I know this is actually writing this behind a computer screen or phone. Yeah,
absolutely. I think people really need to ask themselves, yes, in an ideal world, you have a bigger output of quality content, but would you rather have people connect with genuine quality and you sign people from that, or that you're omnipresent, you're never gone, but what you're saying doesn't make much sense and no one's really understanding what you're trying to offer them?
Yeah, literally. And, you obviously there are people who obviously, thankfully, still understand that, because it was really disheartening or surprising for me to see the changes, pre and post. Yes, I use ChatGPT. It's great, but you still have to care about your audience and your leads and your clients, understand that those are also people behind the screen who have real problems that you want to solve. And that's really it.
I agree with you. I think I have no problem if someone wants to go on Claude and use that to help them write their website if they can't afford a copyright. This is not
It's fine, actually.
Yeah.
But just understand what's happening.
Understand what's happening and put the effort in to go and to make it yours, to make the copy sound like you, to make it, to work with someone, bring the copy to a copywriter, to someone, and see, will you look at this for me? There's just
literally
do something other than just putting it out as it is.
Literally, because you can feel okay, it's better than nothing, but sometimes it's worse than nothing. So you really just have to be aware of that. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are seeing a cultural shift towards more vulnerability and quote unquote quiet success online. As somebody who champions depth over volume, what do you think is a popular piece of copywriting or content advice that you think is becoming obsolete, and what is replacing it?
I think what's becoming obsolete is content repurposing, but I need to give a bit of context as to what I mean. Similar to what we just discussed, it kind of fits in really well. I know that for me, I think it was probably 2022, 2023, there was a really big shift to content repurposing. You know, you write one piece of content or one content idea, and then that becomes an email, and that becomes a post, and that becomes a carousel and a reel and a story sequence. And how much bang for your buck can you turn one idea across like 8 different platforms? Now, the caveat to that is I'm not against repurposing ideas and content, because like it makes sense, and it's a smart idea. But I think the way that it was pushed out back then, and I'm thinking of particular people who were big, proponents of it, was to push it out so you are everywhere all the time. But I really think that volume without any conviction in what you're trying to say, or any specificity into like what your opinion is, or any, focus on what you're trying to write, is just completely pointless right now, because people are so inundated with content all the time that you being everywhere is so overwhelming. If what you're saying doesn't give them value, you use up mental calories for them, and they're just there like, why am I seeing you all the time? Whereas depth is a differentiator now. So I have a really great friend of mine, and she is a nervous system coach, and she's very multifaceted in her talents, and she owns a lot of different businesses. And she doesn't repurpose content across all these platforms. She doesn't really utilize email marketing, but she creates Instagram's her platform of choice, and she creates really, really deep thinking, opinionated content. And it has built her an audience of 20,000 people, genuinely engaged people who genuinely want to hire her all the time, because it replaces that noise with a real guiding light for people. People know they can go to her for depth that actually adds value to their life, or makes them think different, or gives them a solution to something, or shows them a different way to think. And that is, I think, the idea that bulk content everywhere is better than depth is just obsolete now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is an amazing answer. I mean, it's kind of like what we talked about before, just understanding the context. If you have, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Instagram, these are, social media apps that are at literally the top of whatever niche that they're in social media apps. They are kind of there for a reason. They have a specific audience. They're solving a specific problem, and you need to understand that audience. And obviously, you can still, you can still do it, but there is like a difference in having a piece of content that is designed to just generically be on every platform, and a piece of content that is looking for a specific audience on the platform that it's being posted on, is speaking to somebody's, and then you're able to gather like a really strong, engaging community, like you mentioned. And you never know, especially when you're just allowed to see numbers on these social media apps, followers and people who like and all that. But it's it's going to be really hard to guess from those numbers how people are actually connecting and being able to sell. It really depends, because you can really have like a small looking audience, but that audience is super engaged because you put so much thought and effort into understanding who they are. So really, really unmissable. Yeah. Okay. So I believe this is the last question before we enter the rapid fire segment. So my question is, looking at the next 24 months, what's a trend in how people communicate or consume stories. More freelancers and creators should be paying attention to. Like, even if it's not like the loudest trend, just kind of like what you've been noticing that you think would be interesting to share.
Yes. Biggest one for me is that people's trust, your audience's trust, or people who haven't found you yet, who come across your page, that trust is built through consistency of meaning rather than volume of content, like I was saying before. So I really think that looking ahead, communication trend-wise, people will look for a consistency in the meaning of your content and in the perspectives of your content and in the value of your content rather than consistency in the amount of your content. Because I think we forgot, and I think the algorithm wanted us to forget along the way that, you know, when someone comes to your page, they have a chance to binge watch and binge consume all of that you've posted since the beginning of your account. And if that content isn't actually filled with value, has it really made a difference and mattered that you've posted 3 times a day for 3 years if what you said never built on consistency of meaning and depth? I'm going to argue that it doesn't. And so I think you're better off to focus on that than you are, and to show people how you think than to just show them what you're talking about all the time. Show them how you think.
I love that. Honestly, it kind of goes back to just the wider situation of AI and how, in a lot of ways, it's similar to the .com boom and really having people, understand what a disruptor that was. I don't agree with the concept of people saying that, you know, humans are going to be kind of like obsolete now, maybe in some context, but generally feel, in my opinion, people who don't like understand art really or creativity, they feel like, you know, AI can be a genuine kind of like disruptor to the human creative process and what humans put out. But we've seen in a lot of ways how humans just, at the end of the day, they will respond to like a new tool in creative ways that we haven't really understood before. So I do agree. I think that in the future, we are going to see a lot more understanding of the value and depth in stories and really like putting so much of your heart into your content, understanding and having your audience understand that it's really you and your thoughts, your storytelling behind it. And that's what's going to really help you stand out in the space.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. Okay, we are starting our rapid fire segment. Okay, so this is called Hot Takes Court. This is about storytelling. And it's really just a rapid series of polarizing statements. And humans give it verdicts. Convicts. So convict is if it's bogus or misleading, or acquit means it holds up.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay. So authenticity is the most overused word in marketing. Surprise! Okay, next one. Your brand voice should be consistent everywhere.
Acquit.
Okay. Long form content builds deeper connection than social media content.
Convict. I don't think that's always true.
Okay. AI can't write with emotional intelligence.
Acquit.
Holds up. Nice. Okay, a good story is more important than a perfect case study.
Oh, acquit.
Okay. And then last one, everyone has a story worth paying for.
Acquit.
I love that. It's acquit across the board. Wait, you said one convict, right?
Yes, one convict. Yeah, the authenticity one. Because the other, whichever the other one was. Yeah, don't mind me.
Your
I think
brand
I said
voice?
one convict. Yeah, brand voice. Yeah.
Okay, love that. Hope you had fun with that. We are closing out. Thank you so much, Emma, for your time.
Thank you.
Huge thank you. You share the raw, like, human thread behind your work. So do you have any last words that you want to talk about or just share?
Sure. I think, honestly, what I would just say is that if you're listening to this and you're new to freelancing, or freelancing is even something you've done for a few years, like I have, that there's always a chance to go and to make it something that you actually love showing up to. You know, you're not trapped in a version of freelancing that might have been when you started your business. And if you're new to business, you don't have to freelance like everyone else. Find the people that you admire how they run their businesses and ask them questions, reach out to them. Like, don't be afraid to make it something that works for you rather than thinking that it's normal to resent your job. I don't think that you have to live like that.
I agree. I think it's so cool. I still think it's so cool. I came here straight from like the job that I'm in, straight from like a 1 year, 2 year hospital COVID job. And before that, I was in university. I definitely do not take it for granted how cool it is to be able to have that flexibility in my time.
Yeah.
Even in my career, if I really wanted to, I've switched from being a VA. I used to work in copy for a little bit as well, Emma. And a lot of the times for freelancers, they can be stuck in cage of their own mind just a little bit.
Golden handcuffs. Yes.
Yeah. So you have to understand that you can break out of it. So if you want to explore how to turn your own expertise into stories that resonate, you can find Emma at commonthreadagency.com. If this conversation about the heart and hustle of freelance storytelling resonated with you, take a second to follow or subscribe. Share it with somebody who needs to hear that their deepest insights are worth communicating well. And remember, building a meaningful business isn't just about the work you do. It's about a story that you tell about it to your clients and just as importantly to yourself. So I'm Ada Wogu, and this has been Freelancing Unfiltered. Thank you. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye. See you.